Good evening. Welcome to News Tonight on Rajya Sabha television. I'm Aishwarya Kapoor with you. India says there was complete disregard of all mutually agreed norms by Chinese forces, and the Chinese troop build-up in Ladakh's Galwan Valley is the heart of the matter. That's our top focus this evening. Also, all the updates on the coronavirus pandemic and the 45th anniversary of imposition of emergency in the country, and much more coming up ahead. The top story this evening, the Ministry of External Affairs has said that India never attempted to change the status quo along the line of actual control, or the LAC.
Amid reports of China building up troops and infrastructure along the line of actual control in Ladakh, the Ministry of External Affairs confirmed that China had been amassing large number of troops since early May, following which India had to make counter-deployment. After the Galwan Valley clash, both sides deployed troops in large numbers in the area. The MEA described the conduct of the Chinese side along the LAC as complete disregard for existing agreements between the two countries, adding that continuation of the current situation will further vitiate the atmosphere.
The Chinese side departed from these understandings in respect of the LAC in the Galwan area and sought to erect structures just across the LAC. When this attempt was foiled, Chinese troops took violent actions on 15 June 2020 that directly resulted in casualties. Thereafter, both sides remained deployed in large numbers in the region, while military and diplomatic contacts are continuing.
In some other news, India has said that trade with Nepal has been growing despite the coronavirus pandemic. Bilateral trade touched $300 million in the month of May. External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Anurag Srivastava said that Nepal occupies a prominent position for India, and both countries share civilizational, cultural and familial bonds. On the issue of flood management, he said that there is a mechanism which forms the basis for action for both countries. Let's take a listen.
There's already an existing bilateral mechanism between India and Nepal with regard to flooding and inundation works. And the embankment and anti-erosion works have already commenced. We are already ongoing on some of the major rivers along the India-Nepal border. Both sides are coordinating on a real-time basis to minimize the damage due to flooding and inundation in this monsoon season.
On to the other top story that we are tracking. On the 45th anniversary of the imposition of emergency by former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Thursday praised the ordinary citizens and political leaders who opposed the draconian measure on Twitter. He said the country will never forget their sacrifice.
On the 45th anniversary of the imposition of emergency by former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Thursday praised the ordinary citizens and political leaders who opposed the draconian measures on Twitter. He said the country will never forget their sacrifices. Prime Minister Modi said the emergency was imposed in the country exactly 45 years ago. The people who struggled to defend democracy at that time, I salute them. The country will never forget this sacrifice. Senior leaders of the ruling BJP also spoke out against the emergency. Union Home Minister Amit Shah said overnight the nation was turned into a prison. The press, courts, free speech, all were trampled over. Atrocities were committed on the poor and downtrodden. On this day, 45 years ago, one family's greed for power led to the imposition of the emergency. Overnight, the nation was turned into a prison. The press, courts, free speech, all were trampled over. Atrocities were committed on the poor and downtrodden, tweeted Amit Shah. BJP President Jayaprakash Nadda criticized the Congress party while paying tributes to all those who opposed the emergency, saying, I pay tribute to all those who stood firm against the state onslaught and fought for democratic values. prominent think tank, Vivekanand International Foundation, held a webinar to discuss the perils of emergency. Titled The Story of Emergency, the Greatest Threat to Democracy, economic and political analyst S. Gurumurthy, social and political activist K.N. Govindacharya, and former chairman Prasar Bharati A. Surya Prakash took part in the discussion.
45 years have gone by, but many of us who lived through that, who suffered that experience, and all of us who value our constitution and democratic way of life will never forget what happened. And we go on talking about it, writing about it, simply because I think it's very important for every generation to know what happened and how it happened, so that this kind of derailment of our democracy and our core values in our constitution will never happen in this country.
जो मास मूवमेंट होते हैं वो तीन चीजों के परिणाम होते हैं मिलाकर. एक राइपनिंग ऑफ द सिचुएशन, दूसरा मिनिमम इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर टू इन्फ्लुएंस द मैसेजिंग सिस्टम ऑफ द मूवमेंट, और तीसरा है क्रेडिबल लीडरशिप. क्रेडिबल लीडरशिप को पूरा किया जयप्रकाश जी ने. उस इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की जो रिक्वायरमेंट्स है उनको पूरा किया संघ परिवार ने.
Often called the darkest phase of Indian democracy, emergency brought about a tectonic shift in Indian politics. It united the opposition and brought the first non-Congress government at the centre. In this report, we take a look at what led to the emergency and the government's actions during the 21-month period. On the midnight of 25th of June 1975, Indian democracy plunged into its darkest night. Then President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed signed the proclamation of emergency upon the advice of then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi by invoking Article 352 of the Constitution. The announcement was made by Indira Gandhi on All India Radio the next morning, citing internal disturbances. With this began an era of press censorship and stringent curbs on fundamental rights and civil liberties.
The critical turning point, as it were, was the judgment of the Allahabad High Court, saying that unseating Indira Gandhi in an election petition. That happened on June 12. From then, the campaign started within Congress party that come what may, she should not resign as Prime Minister, and it all led up to her decision on 25th of June to impose an emergency using the provisions of Article 352 of the Constitution.
The emergency was imposed at a time when public discontent was at its peak due to unemployment, slow economic growth, price rise and government apathy. In 1974, Jayaprakash Narayan led a students' movement in Bihar that soon spread to other parts of the country. On 12th of June 1975, the Allahabad High Court declared the election of Indira Gandhi null and void, holding her guilty of misuse of government machinery during her campaign. Gandhi, however, held on to her position. On 25th of June, JP led a huge rally in Delhi's Ramlila ground demanding her resignation and calling for nationwide satyagraha. Fearing nationwide strikes, the government declared emergency.
Our Vice President, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu, he was arrested and he was in jail for 17 months. Then Arun Jaitley, he was another man who went to jail and was there, I think, for 19 months. Among the present ministers in the government, Ravi Shankar Prasad, Ram Vilas Paswan, Prakash Javadekar, these are all people who have suffered jail terms at that time, defending India's or demanding the restoration of democracy.
Basic rights of workers were curbed. All strikes by workers were crushed. Not just opposition leaders, even judges and lawyers who raised their voices against government actions were persecuted. The Constitution was amended in an autocratic manner, particularly the 42nd Amendment that extended the term of the elected parliament to 6 years. One of the worst fallouts of the emergency era was the forced sterilization campaign, spearheaded by Sanjay Gandhi.
Every school teacher, constable, they had quota of some 10 people to be brought to sterilization camps. And as a result, policemen would roam around in jeeps, go to the bazaar, this, that, and just gather men of different age groups, you see, just bundle them into a jeep and take them to a primary health center for vasectomy operations.
The state of emergency lasted for 21 months. It was finally withdrawn on 21st of March 1977 when Indira Gandhi decided to hold elections. By then, the opposition united to form the Janata Party, and for the first time ever, the Congress was defeated in the Lok Sabha elections, and a non-Congress government was formed at the centre with Morarji Desai as Prime Minister. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. And now an update on the coronavirus situation in our country. The COVID-19 cases in India crossed 4.7 lakh on Thursday. While the number of recovered cases shows a steady increase, active cases continue to decline. The country saw yet another single-day highest spike in infections with close to 17,000 cases reported in the last 24 hours. The country reported 418 deaths and a record single-day spike of 16,922 cases in the last 24 hours. Total cases climbed to over 4.73 lakh and the death toll rose to 14,894. Over 2.71 lakh patients have been cured so far, while active cases number 1.86 lakh in the country. The recovery rate stands at 57.42%. Over 75 lakh samples have been tested for COVID-19 till 24th of June. 2.07 lakh samples were tested on Wednesday. With over 70,000 cases, Delhi has surpassed Mumbai in total infections. Mumbai has confirmed 69,625 cases. However, the death toll in the national capital is significantly lower than Mumbai, where 3,962 people have died since March. 2,365 people have succumbed to the disease in Delhi. Delhi's cases jumped significantly with a large spike over the past week. The capital reported a record 3,947 new cases in a single day on 23rd of June. Increase in infections come on the back of a sharp increase in testing. Delhi is also witnessing more recoveries than new cases. So far, Maharashtra has reported over 1.42 lakh cases, followed by Delhi and Tamil Nadu. Gujarat has close to 29,000 cases, Uttar Pradesh over 19,000 and Rajasthan 16,000 cases. Maharashtra accounts for 6,739 COVID-19 related deaths, while Delhi 2,365 and Gujarat at 1,735. Arunachal Pradesh with 160 cases recorded its first coronavirus death of a 48-year-old person who was a kidney patient. To contain the spread of the virus, door-to-door surveillance is also being planned by Madhya Pradesh from 1st of July. Delhi too began door-to-door surveillance in containment zones. Mumbai has been doing this exercise for some time now. According to the government, cases per lakh in India at present are 33.39 against the world's 120.21 cases per lakh. Number of deaths per lakh population is also amongst the lowest in the world, with 1.06 deaths per lakh against the world average of 6.24 deaths per lakh population. India is the fourth worst pandemic hit country in the world after the United States, Brazil and Russia. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. And now the global update on the coronavirus pandemic, and the World Health Organization has said that the global coronavirus cases are on course to touch 1 crore by next week. On Thursday, COVID-19 infections crossed 9.5 million worldwide.
We expect to reach a total of 10 million cases within the next week. This is a sober reminder that even as we continue research into vaccines and therapeutics, we have an urgent responsibility to do everything we can with the tools we have now to suppress transmission and save lives.
WHO's emergency chief Dr. Michael Ryan said the pandemic has not yet peaked in many countries and that it is still intense, especially in America.
I would characterize the situation in the Americas in general and in Central and Latin America in general as still evolving, not having reached its peak yet, and likely to result in sustained number of cases and continued deaths in the coming weeks.
At present, the United States has over 2.46 million infections with over 1,20,000 deaths. Several American states are taking a cautious approach in reopening to limit the spread of the virus. On Wednesday, the governors of New York, New Jersey and Connecticut announced quarantine for people coming to the city from U.S. hotspots. In Paris, the Eiffel Tower on Thursday welcomed back visitors with strict hygiene and safety measures. Wearing masks is mandatory for people above 11 years. Visitors are allowed only till the second floor of the tower. On Wednesday, people across Britain gathered in parks and other outdoor spaces to enjoy the hot weather as the country eased social distancing rules.
Hot weather is nice, mostly just wanting to get the little kids out of the house and get them out for a walk, really.
Meanwhile, Britain's Prince William met the Oxford-based COVID-19 vaccine researchers to discuss development on the vaccine. Meanwhile, Oxford University has rolled out Africa's first human trials for a potential coronavirus vaccine in South Africa. The trial is being conducted on 2,000 volunteers from 18 to 65 years of age, including some HIV-positive patients. South Africa is the second country outside UK to take part in the Oxford trial after Brazil launched its trial on Wednesday. New clusters of coronavirus cases continue to be reported from several nations. China reported 19 new COVID-19 cases, including 13 cases from Beijing on Wednesday. Beijing has expanded COVID-19 testing. It has been screening residents since the outbreak of new cases in Xinfadi wholesale market in June. South Korea reported 28 new coronavirus cases on Thursday. Most of the cases are linked with nightclubs, church gatherings, a huge e-commerce warehouse and door-to-door sellers. On Thursday, Australia's Victoria State reported 33 new cases, the biggest daily spike in 2 months. However, Prime Minister Scott Morrison said states and territories must continue to reopen the economy. On to some other news. The Central Board of Secondary Education, or the CBSE, has informed the Supreme Court that it will not conduct the Class 10th board examination, while students of Class 12th will be given an option of appearing in examinations after conditions are conducive.
Class 12 students will have the option to appear in board examinations or take assessment on the basis of their performance in their past 3 exams. The Apex Court will now pass an order on Friday, June 26th, after the government filed a detailed affidavit on the assessment scheme for the exams. The Supreme Court had earlier asked CBSE to consider scrapping the board exams for both Class 10 and 12 in view of the growing cases of coronavirus infections in the country. The court made this suggestion in response to a plea from a group of parents who asked for cancellation of the remaining board exams, citing the pandemic. The parents had said in their plea that conducting examinations across over 15,000 centers at this stage would unnecessarily expose children to COVID-19. They had also asked the board to allot marks for the remaining papers on the basis of the students' school internal assessments and performance in practicals and the examinations that they had taken in March.
Education has the power to bring about change. Human Resource Development Minister Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank shared his views at the CII Education Summit on Thursday. The theme of the conference is Redefining Education for the Emerging World. Discussions were held on how education can give a new direction and what role India can play in it.
Union Human Resource Development Minister Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank said at the conference that there is no dearth of talent in the country, and through its 33 crore students, the country can achieve success continuously. He was all praise for schools moving towards online learning in these testing times and said even students who did not have an internet connection have been provided education during the coronavirus pandemic. The minister also listed out efforts made by the union government in changing the education sector. He said that education is one of the priorities of the central government and that children in the farthest corners of the country must also get education.
हम कमजोर नहीं हैं, हमारे पास प्रतिभा की कमी नहीं है, बस समन्वय की कमी है। कैसे करके उसका उपयोग करना, इस देश की जो देश दुनिया का सबसे बड़े लोकतांत्रिक देश है, 130 करोड़ लोगों का ये देश कुछ भी कर सकता है। और आप तो देखिए ना, 25-30 वर्षों तक तो ये यंग इंडिया रहने वाला है, कोई टिकने वाला नहीं हमारे सामने।
And Thursday was the last day to file nominations for biennial elections to fill vacant seats of Bihar and Andhra Pradesh legislative councils.
5 candidates of the National Democratic Alliance and 1 from the Congress filed their nomination papers in Patna. Chief Minister Nitish Kumar, Deputy Chief Minister Sushil Kumar Modi and top leaders of the JDU and BJP accompanied NDA candidates to the nomination centre. For the 9 vacant seats in Bihar Legislative Council, JDU and RJD have fielded 3 candidates each. BJP has nominated 2 candidates while the Congress has named 1 candidate. Gulam Ghaus, Bhishma Sahni and Kumud Verma are contesting from the JDU. Sanjay Mayuk and Samrat Chaudhary have been nominated by the BJP while Sameer Kumar Singh is the Congress candidate. Sunil Singh, Rambali Chandravanshi and Farooq Sheikh are contesting from the RJD. Elections to fill 9 vacant seats for the Bihar Legislative Council will be held on the 6th of July. Results will be declared the same day. By-election will also be held for 1 seat in the Andhra Pradesh Legislative Council on the 6th of July. The seat fell vacant following the resignation of a member in March this year, whose term was to end in March 2023.
The ruling BJP on Thursday accused the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation of accepting a donation of $3 lakh from China during 2005-2006.
Speaking at a virtual rally in Madhya Pradesh, BJP President JP Nadda said the foundation had accepted donations from China, which were used to carry out studies and promote free trade in India. Refuting Rahul Gandhi's claim of India conceding its territory to China, Nadda reminded the people of the 2017 Doklam crisis and alleged that the Congress MP met the Chinese ambassador to India in the middle of the standoff. The BJP president also slammed the Congress for attacking the government instead of standing by it over border issues and the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic.
1,40,000 लोगों को मेंटेनेंस ऑफ इंटरनल सिक्योरिटी एक्ट और DIR डिफेंस ऑफ इंडियन रूल के तहत जेल के सीखों के पीछे डाल दिया गया। देश उनको नमन करता है, उन स्वतंत्रता सेनानियों को, लोकतंत्र के सेनानियों को, जिन्होंने आजादी के तरीके की लड़ाई लड़ी और भारत को इस अधिनायकवाद से छुट्टी दिला करके लोकतंत्र को स्थापित किया। देश उनको आज नमन करता है, ये मैं आपके साथ कहना चाहता हूं।
Indian Space Research Organization or ISRO Chief K. Sivan on Thursday welcomed the government's decision to open the space sector for private players. Addressing a digital press conference on Thursday, Sivan said the private sector will now be allowed to carry out space activities like building rockets, satellites, and providing launch services. Sivan said that the private sector can also be part of the interplanetary missions of ISRO. The Union Cabinet on Wednesday approved participation of the private sector in the entire range of space activities, including planetary exploration.
If the space sector is opened up, the potential of the entire country can be utilized to scale up the benefits from space technology. This will not only result in an accelerated growth of this sector, but will enable Indian industry to be an important player in the global space economy.
On Wednesday, the Cabinet also approved formation of a new organization, the Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center. It said that InSpace will provide a level playing field for private sector companies to use Indian space infrastructure. The ISRO chief said that the space body will help InSpace in all its endeavors. Sivan added that these reforms are expected to allow ISRO to focus more on research and development activities, new technologies, exploration missions, and human spaceflight program.
There is also requirement for the policies. Definitely, to make this system to functional effectively, definitely we need policies to be built, and we need a new navigation policy. At the same time, we are having SATCOM policy, remote sensing policy existing, but they need suitable modifications on that SATCOM policy and remote sensing policy for the purpose of in-space to perform its duty in an effective manner.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi led NDA government's flagship urban transformation mission has completed 5 years on Thursday.
The NDA government announced an ambitious plan for urban transformation with the launch of the Smart Cities Mission, the Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation, and the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban in 2015. Addressing a webinar to mark the occasion, Urban Affairs Minister Hardeep Singh Puri said India has undertaken one of the most comprehensive planned urbanization programs in the history of the world. He said 25 lakh houses have so far been delivered to beneficiaries under PMAY Urban. Talking about another mission, Amrut, he said the ministry has so far provided 79 lakh household water tap connections and 45 lakh sewer connections in the country. About the Smart Cities mission, he said the integrated command and control centers developed under the mission have helped cities in their fight against COVID-19.
Now, news from Jammu and Kashmir: 2 unidentified militants were killed in North Kashmir's Sopore on Thursday. Army and CRPF personnel launched a search and cordon operation in the area after receiving inputs about the presence of terrorists. The encounter started after the militants opened fire on the search party. 2 AK-47 rifles were recovered from the spot. In a setback for Pakistan, the global terror financing watchdog Financial Action Task Force has decided to keep the country in the grey list. The decision was taken at the FATF's plenary session held virtually on Wednesday under the Chinese presidency of Xiangmin Lu. It follows Pakistan's failure to meet the FATF deadline to stop funding terror outfits operating from its soil, like Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. Islamabad is yet to complete 13 out of 27 items of its FATF action plan. Pakistan's progress will be evaluated at the next FATF plenary meeting in October 2020. In February, FATF had warned Pakistan that all deadlines had expired and if they did not act by June, action would be taken. Meanwhile, the US released its annual country reports on terrorism 2019 that state that Pakistan remains a safe harbor for regionally focused terrorist groups. The US State Department's report said Pakistan allowed groups targeting India, including the LAT and Jaish-e-Mohammed, to operate from its territory. Islamabad did not take action against terrorists like JEM founder and UN-designated terrorist Masood Azhar, believed to remain free in Pakistan. The report said Pakistan took modest steps in 2019 post-Pulwama attack in February. However, it still remained a safe harbor for regionally focused terrorist groups. The report also said that the suspension of US aid to Pakistan remained in effect throughout 2019. And now an update on the weather conditions. And on a day when heavy showers brought relief to the national capital after days of sweltering heat, the Met Department on Thursday announced the arrival of monsoon in Delhi NCR.
Monsoon has so far covered Haryana, Uttar Pradesh and parts of Punjab and Rajasthan. The Met Department has also predicted heavy rainfall in parts of Delhi. Widespread rains are expected in eastern UP in the next 4 to 5 days, while heavy rain is predicted for the western Himalayan region in the next 48 hours. Meanwhile, in Assam, the flood situation worsened with nearly 180 villages in 7 districts getting affected. The death toll in the state has also gone up to 14. Dibrugarh town is facing a flood-like situation with many parts of the township getting partially submerged.
And that's all in this edition of the news. Do tune in tomorrow at the same time for all the day's big stories. Till then, take care, stay safe. Good night.